It's Breakfast with Friends. My name is Jonathan Heller, and with me in the studio is Rachel Govender. Now joining us via StreamYard, Nico Kleynhans. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Nico.
Good morning, Jonathan, and good morning to the listeners at home and to Rachel as well.
Nico, this morning, hearing when God answers is the topic you want to talk about. Please take us through it.
Yes. As I've grown older, as most older people do, we look back on our lives and we look at the lessons that we've learned and we wonder what would have been the impact if I'd learned some of those lessons a lot earlier in my life. I remember as an 18-year-old Christian telling my pastor that I had finally finished reading the New Testament. And I now had all the knowledge at my fingertips because God spoke to us through the New Testament. And I was now wondering what I was going to do for the rest of my life. Now, I'd spoken on a previous occasion on the station about a motor car accident that I had. And in that accident, I rolled a combi down the side of a hill. And on the last bounce, the door burst open and the top half of me fell out of the car. And the bottom half of me remained inside the car. And the weight of the combi basically caught me in a scissors movement. And I was cut across my stomach and crushed under the vehicle. Now, that was a good time to learn a lesson as any. My companion jumped out the car, used the car jack to jack the car up, and slowly managed to pull me out from under the car. And I was in so much pain at that moment in time that I couldn't really move. So he covered me from head to foot in a sleeping bag. And I remember the two of us asking God for a sign that God was still in control. Now, having asked that, we began to wait to see how God was going to answer that prayer, that he was still in control. Well, a Volkswagen Beetle pulled up, and it was driven by a fellow who sold coffins. And all he saw was a body lying at the side of the road, covered in a sleeping bag, apparently dead. And I could hear him switch into the sales mode as he tried to explain to my companion that he had a slightly used coffin that he could let us have for a very cheap price. I still don't know what a slightly used coffin is, by the way.
Whoa.
Now, we had asked God for a sign of hope. I was expecting God to send us some kind of angel, and the person who arrives sells coffins. That suggested this was not going to be a good day, because that was not the answer that I was wanting or needing or expecting. But as he left us without the sale, he told us that there was a little mission hospital not far away. It was not well known, and it was probably going to be better for us to get me to that hospital rather than wait for a helicopter to come up from Addington Hospital. Well, the mission hospital sent the ambulance. It was accompanied by the youngest medic I have ever seen. I remember looking at him and thinking, does your mommy know that you are working? And does your mommy know that you're a doctor? And he burst out crying. And he told me this was his first day in South Africa.
Oh, wow.
I was his first solo patient. And he was terrified that I would die and spoil his career as a doctor. But he knew he had to take charge. And all he could remember was that if I kept breathing, I would not die. And that was his advice. So now was potential angel number 2, whose answer to me was keep breathing. And inside, I was becoming less impressed with the way God was dealing with that day. I remember feeling a sense of irritation. Anyway, the ambulance rushed me off to the hospital. I arrived and was taken into theater immediately. I was still conscious, and the doctors stood around my bed and tried to diagnose what the next step would be. I heard them say they think I'd ruptured my kidney, and I heard them say that I was probably bleeding internally, which would have explained why this liquid feeling that I was having inside. But the hospital had run out of blood. And clearly, if I was bleeding internally, I would need a transfusion. And so it became necessary for them to link me with their emergency blood. And this emergency blood had come from the medical personnel. It was set aside. I don't know how the transfusions worked, because at that point, I lost consciousness. And again, I remember thinking, why is God so disorganized? Why I asked for a sign? Why were the signs that I was getting so confusing? Well, I'm going to jump 20 years ahead in time. I had learned to walk again. My kidney was removed, but I was still unsure of the lesson that God was trying to teach me. And then one day I had to complete a form for life insurance with a company called Sage Life. They don't exist anymore. That shows how old I am. But one of the questions they asked was, did you receive blood products from Addington Blood Center? And it named the month of October, and it named the year of my accident.
Yeah.
I had not received blood from Addington. I had received it from the mission hospital. But the Addington blood which had arrived at the mission hospital had been used up. And so my blood came from some of the doctors at the hospital. I was intrigued by the question, and so I contacted the underwriter. And I asked, why is that question so important? I'm in the industry. I have never seen that question on a form before. The underwriter said that was the first time in South Africa that HIV-infected blood had been used for transfusions in South Africa. And all the patients who had received those products had become infected. I then realized that that coffin salesman who told us to go to the mission hospital was an angel.
Yeah.
He had been sent by God. He was part of God's plan. So if I were addressing a young audience today of new Christians, I would say God does answer prayers. But our problem is we're expecting pink bubbles to fall down from heaven, to float around us to confirm that this is an answer. That's not how it works. And I wish I had learned that lesson earlier in my life. It would have made my life so much easier. Stop expecting pink bubbles with the answer. Thank you.
Nico, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And yeah, that is such a powerful testimony. Again, Nico did share his personal story of hope a couple of years ago, and we will find that and link it to this video as well for those who'd like to watch and experience the whole story. But Nico, as always, you've brought something for us to think about and also to meditate on. So thank you so much. We appreciate you, and God bless you.
Thank you. Good day.